The Kansas City Chiefs have found their man for the 2026 offensive coordinator position, hiring Eric Bienemy on the first day that the Chiefs announced they'd be conducting any interviews, with no news stories or breaking information on other candidates that they looked after. Matt Nagy is out, Eric Bienemy is in, and we're going to be covering the 2025 offense today in an effort to see what or how Eric Bienemy could change about the 2025 Kansas City Chiefs team. We're going to be looking at the careers of Matt Nagy and Eric Bienemy, who each spent 5 years as offensive coordinator of the Kansas City Chiefs, some of the offensive problems the team went through in 2025, all in an effort to figure out whether or not this is the cure for what ails the Kansas City Chiefs offense. Stay tuned as we do all of this on Chiefs Coast Bias. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to Chiefs Coast Bias with me, Malgore. I know you have a lot of options in YouTube when it comes to overweight, middle-aged, bearded white man talking to a camera about the Kansas City Chiefs, and I'm glad that you chose me. We're going to be getting through a lot of information today, and we're going to try to keep it as snappy as we can as we look at the Kansas City Chiefs 2025 offense and then the careers of Eric Bienemy and Matt Nagy in an attempt to see whether or not this is going to signal a new direction of the offense or if it can solve a lot of the problems that we saw with the 25 Kansas City Chiefs. But first, I have a special treat for you. I'm going to read you some excerpts from an article that published in The Athletic last week about the Kansas City Chiefs. It's all about Patrick Mahomes and his greatness. So I'm calling this, in the dead of winter, cold temperatures out there in the Midwest and across the northeastern part of the country, this is going to be like a little Mahomes cooked meal, something warm and comforting to make you happy even in these cold and isolated times. And the name of the article is called "Why Did the Bills and Ravens Make Coaching Changes? Blame It on Mahomes." How could you not like the title of that article as a Chiefs fan? Here's just a few quotes that stuck out to me because I really do think it says a lot about who has owned the AFC and who, even not being in the playoffs, continues to assert his influence over the direction of other teams in the conference. So let's take a look at the first quote. Yet Harbaugh hasn't been to a Super Bowl since the 2012 season when he won his lone championship, and McDermott has never taken a team to the ultimate game. That's especially glaring given the presence of transcendent quarterbacks in those organizations. And we now know, especially galling to owners of Steve Bisciotti and Terry Pegula, respectively. Both owners got tired of waiting, and significantly, they got tired of living in the shadow of Patrick Mahomes. That's right. Patrick Mahomes, so dominant, he's getting other coaches fired for their inability to beat him. Second quote, because it gets even better. Yet even as he rehabs and plots his comeback, Mahomes looms large over the AFC. Because of his absence, there was a perception that Jackson and Allen could finally have a clear path to playing for Lombardi Trophy. It turned out to be a dead end. That is just beautiful writing. Can we get this author? This is Michael Silver. Can we get this man some sort of national sports writing award for this cogent prose? Like I said, it's a delicious Mahomes cooked meal. Last quote from this article, and then we'll move on to the content of today's show. This is a quote from Bills owner Kim Pegula. "We've been sitting here for years trying to figure out how to beat Tom Brady. Now he's finally gone, and guess what? We have to deal with Patrick Mahomes for the next 15 years. I don't know exactly what year that quote came from. I don't think you're going to have to deal with him for another 15, but certainly he's going to be a thorn of your side for years to come. So that was just a little treat, a little appetizer for you before we get into the main event here. Now we're going to be evaluating the 2025 Kansas City Chiefs offense. But first, I would like to thank our sponsor for today's video. That's right, we've got our first sponsor here at Chiefs Coast Bias. Today's sponsor is Not Betting on Sports. You ever watch a sporting event and notice every commercial is for sports gambling? Do you think that's because everyone's winning? Hell no! There's no chance that you're going to come out ahead. So why don't you try our new product, Not Betting on Sports? Click the link below and please support our sponsors. With that, let's talk about the 2025 Kansas City Chiefs offense. So what went wrong? Well, we're going to look at just 3 areas today. There can and probably will be a whole episode doing a deeper dive, but I'm going to talk about some of the ones that I think were sort of the big picture ideas that Chiefs fans went through on what ails the offense. The first one is one-score games. The Chiefs were dreadful in one-score games in 2025. 1-9 to be exact. Only 2 NFL teams since 2000 have had 10 one-score games in a season and went 1-9 or worse. The 2014 Buccaneers and the 2025 Kansas City Chiefs. And you know that if you're on a list with the 2014 Buccaneers, probably not a good sign for the quality of your team. 8 losses when the Chiefs had a chance to take a lead. That is huge. We saw it go the other way the year before. The Chiefs rode all the way to the Super Bowl. And I think you could say it's regression to the mean, except it's not. They went completely winless. Oh, I'm sorry. They had 1 win in 10 one-score games last season. That is not good. So one-score games was a huge part of the narrative for why the 25 Chiefs season failed. Second, no explosive runs. And anyone watching this video that follows the Chiefs knows that this is a big problem that the Chiefs had in the 2025 season. The Chiefs had just one 20-plus yard rush from a running back all season, becoming only the second team of the 2020s to have its backfield produce explosives at such a low volume. Put simply, the Chiefs were great in short yardage situations. Kareem Hunt 1-2 yards on 3rd and 4th down, but they could not generate an explosive run. And Andy Reid himself said in one of his closing press conferences that it doesn't matter if you can get 3 or 4 yards of carry on every run. It's not going to be enough to get safeties and linebackers to creep up because there's no threat of an explosive run that's going to ultimately hurt the defense. It's the ultimate keep them in front of you defensive strategy where you see that a team can't run the ball effectively, so you're not concerned. You just keep them in front of you, let them have their 3 or 4 yards because eventually they're going to not get the 3 or 4, get put into a 3rd and long or an obvious passing situation, and you're good to go. So awful run game and no explosive runs was the second reason. Third and final reason we're going to look today is another one I think a lot of people were hoping we would clearly fix with the new offensive coordinator. We're going to find out whether or not that's the case today, and that is predictability of the offense and lack of creativity. Here's a quote from Mahomes on offensive predictability. The one part about having so much success is teams watch a lot of film on you, and so they try to have good game plans of how to combat what you do and what you've done well. You saw that this year. Teams were very conscious of the plays that we've hit for a long time. So we have to find ways to counteract that and go at teams and be able to utilize that and make more explosive plays. Even Mahomes realized by the end of the season that teams just knew what the Chiefs were calling. All the looks they'd been dialing up for years that led to some of the best offenses in the NFL suddenly failed. Most emblematic of this, in my opinion, is the Chargers game, the second Chargers game near the end of the season, when receivers were just getting lit up because every defender for LA absolutely knew what route it was going to be. So even though they weren't covering off the snap, they baited the Chiefs into throwing those routes so that they could put big hits on them. There has been twice this season, one time against Jacksonville, it actually resulted in a pick six, where teams knew that if they showed pressure, exactly what the hot route Mahomes was going to throw to was. So what'd they do? They faked pressure and then came back into coverage, sometimes off the defensive line. Cost Mahomes a pick six and ultimately cost the Chiefs the Jacksonville Jaguars game, but there were multiple other instances where defenders got a hand on those balls, they just couldn't quite catch them. So those are the 3 reasons that we're going to talk about a little bit more today about why the Chiefs offense was so bad in 2025 compared to 2024. And if you just look at the regular season schedule, did the Chiefs beat a playoff team? Let's see here. I've got it right on this piece of paper. I am looking. Nope, it looks like they didn't have a single win against a team that made the playoffs. Think about that. 16 teams in the conference. 7 of them make the playoffs. Chiefs could not get a win against any of them. That is egregious. And as we talk a little bit more about some of the other stats we go through, we'll kind of revisit this. But that's just a short summary of what went wrong for the 2025 Kansas City Chiefs offense. So now let's talk about Eric Bienemy versus Matt Nagy. That's right, the main event, ladies and gentlemen. And I'm going to go back to full screen here So this is Eric Bienemy versus Matt Nagy, offensive ranks by year. Under points and yards, you're going to see where the Chiefs rank, 1 to 32, 1 being the best. And you have to remember, for Matt Nagy, it's actually the first 2 years, 16 and 17, as well as the last 3 years. Now, we do see a noticeable trend there. Eric Bienemy started in 2018, which did just happen to be the year Mahomes started. So those first 2 years with Nagy, those are Alex Smith years. And honestly, if you look at it, 12 and 4, 13th in points, 20th in yards. That's not egregious with an Alex Smith-led team. 2017, 6th in points, 5th in yards. Smith's best season as Kansas City Chiefs quarterback, allowing us to get something for him when the Chiefs traded him in the offseason. But then you get Mahomes, and look where you go. Let's look at points. 1, 5, 6, 4, 1. That is a hell of a 5-year streak. And that's the 5 Bienemy years. Look at the yards. 1, 6, 1, 3, 1. That's the Bienemy years. And then when do we see a drop-off? 2023. That is the addition of Matt Nagy. So it doesn't look great on paper in terms of the total output of points and yards for the Chiefs based on offensive coordinator. That being said, here's a couple of other things. The Nagy average over his 5 seasons as offensive coordinator, the Chiefs averaged 14th in the NFL in yards and 14th in points. Now remember, that does include 2 years of Alex Smith. The Eric Bienemy average, which is all Mahomes, the average yards ranked for the Kansas City Chiefs is 2.4, and the average points ranked for the Kansas City Chiefs is 3.4. So very impressive. It's hard to say it's all Mahomes, though, because 3 of the 5 seasons of Nagy, that's 60% of his time coaching the Kansas City Chiefs, he did have Patrick Mahomes. And remember, Eric Bienemy also had a year without Tyreek Hill. Who was our best receiver that year? I guess Juju Smith-Schuster, 2022 Juju Smith-Schuster? Not exactly a Hall of Famer. So that's just kind of a broad overview. Next up, we have Eric Bienemy versus Matt Nagy in terms of penalties by year. Because this is another one I hear a lot. Oh, we bring in Eric Bienemy. Those penalties are going to go away. We saw too many penalties last year. Eric Bienemy, he yells at people. And we all know if you yell at people, they're going to do better and they're not going to have penalties. Well, is that true? Let's take a look. This is penalties by year. Remember, 2016 and 2017 is Matt Nagy, as well as the last 3 years, while the 5 in the middle, 18 through 22, is Eric Bienemy. Are you seeing anything there? Are you seeing something consistent? Because I sure am. Here, let's get this up. You know what? I don't want you to have to squint. Look at that. If anything, there's a slight decrease in penalties with Matt Nagy. So that's interesting. But really, they're kind of the same. The Chiefs have always been near the bottom of the league in terms of penalties, especially offensive penalties. When we look at total penalties, Eric Bienemy had one great season, 97. But look at the others, 147, 124, 126. All of those higher than Matt Nagy these last 3 years. You could argue, oh, it was Mahomes, he was just getting started. But I don't think a significant enough percentage of those penalties are on Mahomes for us to say, oh, the reason Bienemy had more penalties was because Mahomes wasn't used to the offense yet, or he was getting used to the NFL. I think it's just the Andy Reid teams tend to be highly penalized, especially on the offensive side of the ball. It is what it is. There's a lot of motion, which creates a lot of opportunities for false starts, for illegal motions, for lining up offsides. You might remember that game. So it's just going to happen. I don't think that if you look at the data here, there's a reasonable case to be made that hiring Eric Bienemy is somehow going to decrease the number of penalties that the Kansas City Chiefs deal with. So here's our next piece of data on EB versus Nagy, and that's pass play percentages and ranks by year. Another narrative that I hear is that bringing back Eric Bienemy is going to enhance the run game, that the Chiefs are going to get back to an aggressive ground attack. I think that could be true in some cases, but let's see if in terms of raw numbers this is actually the case when we have EB versus Matt Nagy. Once again, remember 16 and 17 are Matt Nagy, and as well as 23, 24, and 25. The 5 years in the middle, 18 through 22, are Eric Bienemy. Look at those ranks. This is pass play percentages and ranks by year. So what percentage of our total plays were pass plays instead of run plays? And what was our rank in the NFL? 1 would be that we had the absolute most pass plays in the NFL. 32 would be we had the least pass plays. Well, let's look at Nagy. 19, 12, 7, 10, 6. When he had Smith, ranked a little lower in pass plays. With Mahomes, we go higher. But look at Eric Bienemy. 10, 10, 5, 6, 8. Bottom line is, in terms of percentage plays that are going to be called pass in Kansas City, I'm not seeing a lot of changes here just because of Eric Bienemy. In fact, it looks like they're just as pass happy. Are you noticing a trend here? Because I think one of the conclusions that we might be able to reach is that perhaps the offensive coordinator in Kansas City isn't the one making all of the most fundamental decisions on the offense. Food for thought. Next up, we got Eric Bienemy versus Matt Nagy in terms of rushing stats by year. So we talked about percentage of pass plays. Let's go full screen here. Here are the rushing yards, the attempts, the yards per carry, the rushing yards a game. Let's just focus on rushing yards a game. And you're going to see, look at that, a lot of consistency. Matt Nagy, 109, 118, 106, 105, 104. Eric Bienemy, 115, 98. That was a Super Bowl winning season, by the way. 112, 115, 115.9 Super Bowl win. Okay, so we see again that in terms of rushing touchdowns, in terms of rushing yards a game, the average across their 10 years on rushing yards a game is 110.2. And when you look at Matt Nagy and Eric Bienemy, they're both pretty darn close to that number. Matt Nagy had 118 rushing yards a game. Eric Bienemy's highest rushing yards a game came in his first season with 115.9. He did that again in his last season as offensive coordinator, but you never see a noticeable increase because of Bienemy. So I think that the narrative that Eric Bienemy is going to get us back to running the ball more or get us to more rushing yards is probably inaccurate, because we have 5 years of data comparing him to 5 years of Matt Nagy across two quarterbacks, and we just see that it's going to be consistent. So if you're expecting some sort of big turnaround as a Kansas City Chiefs fan, I don't hold your breath. I don't think it's going to happen. So now comes the conclusion where I give you my take and do a little bit of what us in the business call tickle your tonsils.
Well, we're going to try to tickle your tonsils.
So how do I feel about this hire? I think the word that I would use to describe it is apathy. I'm not super pumped about it. I'm not super angry about it. I think any fan that was under the assumption that this was going to lead to us bringing in some new outside mind or someone that made wholesale changes to the structure of the offense, I heard absurd things like Mike McDaniel might come aboard. That was just never going to happen. This is a one-man show. He's been a head coach in the NFL since 1999. He's coached in 6 Super Bowls. He's taken 2 different quarterbacks and 2 different teams to Super Bowls in his time as an NFL coach. He's not going to change his ways. The role of Eric Bienemy, Matt Nagy, or anyone as offensive coordinator is to coach the team to help them execute the structure of the offense that Andy Reid comes up with. Now, I don't think this means that Andy Reid is change-averse. We've seen plenty of stories in the media over the years about how he listens to players to design new plays. It would be absurd to think that this means that he's not listening to his offensive coordinator. So is Eric Bienemy going to have an influence on play calling? Yeah. Is Eric Bienemy going to bring in some new ideas? Absolutely. But you know what? Matt Nagy did the same thing when he came back. The bottom line is that even if they're calling some of the plays, and I do think the offensive coordinator calls a good chunk of the plays for this team, there's one man who gives the final okay on it, even if that's just by him not rejecting the play. I think every play called in this team is implicitly accepted or explicitly rejected by Andy Reid. So for me, it was just never in the cards that we were going to get that. Does that mean that I think that the offense is going to be broken? No. I ragged on EPA a little bit earlier, but there is a lot of truth to that the offense was better than it looked, because we did have a lot of unfortunate bounces. I just think that there's a limit to that. That we could say that luck accounted for some percentage of the offensive failure, but there's still a big gap in there of other factors where we were bad in high-pressure situations. We couldn't play consistent football at the right times to complement the defense and vice versa. Untimely mistakes and penalties. Playing a good drive until the most crucial play or two. That happened too often for me to say that this offense is completely fine. Changes need to be made, but I don't think that they're fundamental changes. And honestly, I trust Andy Reid. Like I said, this guy's been coaching since 1999. He's one of the three best coaches in NFL history, and he has shown throughout his career that not only does he innovate, but he's often ahead of the game. This is a man who knew that passing on first down was the future of the NFL offense a solid 10 years before any of his contemporaries did. That kind of offensive philosophy and innovation is impressive and rare in the NFL, so I look forward to seeing what Andy Reid does. Are we going to see a lot of the same concepts? Absolutely. It's the way the concepts are packaged and when they're deployed that I think Andy Reid's going to innovate. And where does Eric Bienemy fit into all this? Is he going to make the team better? I do think he is. Andy Reid is a player's coach. It's one of the reasons that he's been so successful. He wants players to be who they are, to enact their personalities on the field and use that to motivate them. They want to play hard for him because he respects them so much. That is an excellent quality to have in a coach, but you can't have an entire coaching staff like that. You need a yin to Andy Reid's yang. Andy Reid's yang. Can I say that on YouTube without being edited? Whatever. You can't have all of the coaches have that mentality. You've got to have at least one or two guys that are more fire and brimstone. And if there's one thing that all players consistently have said about Eric Bienemy, it's that he is going to get up your ass if you make a mistake. And no matter how good you are, he's going to find the one thing that you could be doing better, and he's going to challenge you and push you to do it. So I do think he's going to make a difference. I also think he's going to make a difference because he's a new voice. I know that sounds strange because he's spent 5 years as offensive coordinator here previously, but a large chunk of the roster weren't really here for that. It is going to be a new voice for them, and even the old players that were here at the time, it's still going to be a fresh perspective from them as well. All of these are good things, and I think they're inevitable changes that any successful team in the NFL has to go through. You have to be changing things up. Sometimes you need a new voice. So, do I think that we're going to be running a new offensive system in 2026? No, I don't. Andy Reid's still in charge. He's going to stay in charge, and this offense is going to largely look the same. Do I think that situational calls and that the execution will improve with Eric Bienemy? Yes, I do. So I'm looking forward to seeing how this goes for the Kansas City Chiefs. I'm looking forward to see if we can discern any personnel influence that Eric Bienemy might have as we go into the offseason. And I'm just looking forward to getting more of those Eric Bienemy press conference quotes. So I hope you've enjoyed our brief rundown of the Kansas City Chiefs offense and our comparison of Matt Nagy and Eric Bienemy. Thank you again for watching. If you could hit the like and subscribe button, it would help me out a ton. Brand new channel, just trying to get my reach out there as much as I can. Passionate fan who wants to talk Kansas City Chiefs. Hopefully more than just my closest friends are watching this. So until next time, I'm Mal Gore. This is Chiefs Coast Bias. We're signing off. You have a fan-flippin-tastic day.